All right. So welcome, Stephen, to the Growth Trajectory podcast. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, Maitreya. This is very exciting.
Yeah. I was just telling you, I remember catching up with you for a coffee a few years ago looking for a job from you.
Yeah. And it's like, it's a small group as well, industry that we work in. So it's no surprise that we've crossed paths and at least once, if not multiple times. I obviously can't do that a lot at the moment. The last few years. Yeah, no, we do work in a small industry, and yeah, it's great that we do overlap. I don't really say we compete. We collaborate, if you like, on in the industry, which is a nice way to work with each other. Even though we're in different businesses.
Yes, exactly right. And I've been following the changes that you've been making over the last few years, and you've started the Unleashed Zone and the ICN, which is really exciting. They both look fantastic. So congratulations on that.
Thanks.
I wanted to actually start to ask you about, well, one of the great things about LinkedIn is you can sort of look at someone's career history. You do a bit of stalking on their profile and find out what they've been up to. And so I did a bit of that. And yeah, you started your career as an accountant at KPMG way back in the late 90s. So I wanted to sort of ask you a bit about that. What was that like, and how was your experience at KPMG early on?
It was great. So I've, as a lot of us have done, I think probably all of us have done, R&D tax as a career path isn't something you sort of tick the box as you're going through your studies, that's for sure. So it doesn't exist until you actually start doing it.
Yeah.
So I came out of uni with, I had a science degree, and I was going back and I was doing an accounting. So I went back and did a master's accounting because I wanted to sort of get that mix of science, engineering. So I had a sort of general background in a whole bunch of stuff at uni. But I really enjoyed the business side of learning, basically, and applying. And then this random ad came up. I actually have got it somewhere. I pulled it out a couple of years ago. This random ad came up in the paper looking for graduates to have this mixed sort of skill set. I went, oh, that's me. And at that stage you apply for everything. So yep, I'll have a crack at that. And I was just really lucky to get it. I wasn't number one on their selection list. I was number two, and I was really lucky. There's a guy in Perth, Neil Prentice. Big shout out to Neil. He was also on the team there, and he convinced them to bring a second person on, which was me. So my whole career is all thanks to Neil. I have no idea what I'd be doing if it wasn't Neil twisting some arms and getting me in the team. And I was really fortunate to join. Basically one of Australia's leading R&D tax teams. KPMG is still very, very strong R&D tax practice, but back in the day, they were huge in Melbourne and across Australia, very large. Our Perth team was pretty good size-wise comparing to others. But joining a large international firm like KPMG, you get to learn not just the skills, and my original mentor there, unfortunately, he's passed away. Andrew Whitten, Dr. Andrew Whitten, was a superstar, absolute superstar with R&D tax and innovation in general. So I got to learn, and Phil, who you might know as well, Frenshaw.
I do know Phil, yeah.
Exactly, the partner there, and they had just so much experience, but also the processes, the QAs, and those sorts of things that mean that you do have to follow process and procedure. You don't just wander around like a cowboy and just do what you feel like. It's like, how do we engage with the client? How do we manage the job? How do we do all the processes, the quality processes, as well as providing great support. So no, I was super lucky to sort of land in that environment with that team at that time as well. It was just luck.
Yeah. And then you decided to try your hand at a bit of business development for a while. Left KPMG to go do some BD.
Yeah, I guess so I went from Capers to then working in a small accounting practice for a while, or a small medium accounting practice for a while, which was great. So I did the whole, okay, well, I'll see how I can go out and about. Well, then Andrew again. So Andrew Whitten was a driving factor in a lot of career decisions I made. He was starting an engineering, he was taking on an engineering firm with one of the partners I was actually working with in the tax practice, in the accounting practice. And they asked if I wanted to come on board because obviously I had a pretty strong interest in business development, marketing, and getting out and about seeing people. And so they asked me to come in-house as basically a bit of BD, but also just the internal admin, management support, and taking care of R&D and stuff like that for internally with them. So that was a great little experience to go in-house. And again, just sort of, it was a really cool engineering practice. It was a mix of, if you like, the workshop and the design and the engineering. So it was a really cool place to be. And you got to experience, as an R&D tax advisor, you're working on the outside coming in. So I got to flick the switch for a little while and work on the inside, and really enjoyed that. But the best thing I found out about that was I missed R&D tax. So I missed actually doing R&D tax all the time. Luckily enough, KPMG took me back. And so I went back and joined Phil again, and sort of really enjoyed sort of getting back into it. But it was a great, Centrix Engineering was the firm back in the day. And I loved working with those guys.
I being on the inside of an R&D company developing something is a very different experience, and I had the pleasure of doing that for a couple of years on a startup called Epic Delivery. And it was something that I craved, like not being the consultant, being on the inside, working with the founder, trying to get something out there and create something new. It was an amazing experience, and I learned a lot from that. But again, it comes with its own stresses and its own dilemmas, which R&D consulting doesn't necessarily have as much of. And we found it very tough going and very difficult. But I totally relate to that experience of wanting to get on the inside and seeing what that's like.
Yeah, and because, I had a reasonable understanding, obviously, from my background and stuff, but until you're in there, sitting down next to them, working with them, when you're talking to someone as an advisor or a consultant, they tell you certain things and you take it, you sort of push and pull, but you take it to a certain extent on face value. So you go, okay, let's just go behind the scenes a little while. And they've been telling me all this stuff. Is it what they actually do? How are they actually interacting and working and everything else? It was, and I loved it as well. It was good fun.
Yeah, cool. And then, so after you went back to KPMG, you made director there, and then in 2012, I think it was, made the switch to RSM. So what motivated that change for you?
I'm just stuff again. So I've been a CAPers and again loved that. So that was 6 years, the second run there, and the RSM opportunity sort of came up with regards to, I guess they wanted to build a practice, and so in the R&D tax world, R&D tax had predominantly up until about that stage been run primarily by the big accounting firms, so your KPMGs, EYs, Deloitte's, PwC, and then a few small practices. So like when I went out on my own, there was a few boutique firms, and BDO, Natalie had already started doing the R&D tax of BDO, and so around Australia, but it was still predominantly Big Four and a few others, but it was starting to get the other accounting firms could start to see obviously the opportunity that they were missing, and the impact that R&D tax has on their clients. So bringing that service in house. So RSM and there's a few other firms at that stage sort of talking around taking on doing more R&D tax, and because RSM was a national or international but national firm, was also a unique opportunity where the head office was in Perth, where I could come in, start the team up from scratch, and really have a crack at building up a basically an R&D tax practice on my, from get-go, which was too good an opportunity to ignore. They have great partners, great people to work with, and they basically did give me the freedom to say, Steve, just have a crack, see how you can go build it, and see what happens. So I sort of couldn't turn it down. I was like, well, cool, I get to see if I can do something here as well.
Yeah, and so how did that journey go? Given free reign, license to go out, recruit a team, build all the systems and processes around it, grow the client base. How did that go? You were there for 8 years, I think. Yeah,
8 years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So we ended up probably having the second largest team in Perth. Depending on time of the week and the headcount. So we had a practice in Melbourne and Sydney. So I had a partner in Sydney. I had directors or principals, we called them, in Melbourne and 2 in Perth. So across Australia, we had a very big practice by the time I left. It was going really well. Great team, great people. And I guess our approach was always to deliver the absolute best service, regardless of who the client was, big, small, or medium. So it was always based on, well, it was what we all do, but it was like, okay, how can we deliver the absolute best service at all times? And what does that quality look like? And how do we build a team around that? How do we train them? How do we support them? And how do we find our clients? Which is something that we do I did, and the team around me did quite intensively with regards to how we get out and about to grow the practice. So obviously growing the team was priority number 1, but you can't grow the team if you've got some clients, and you can't grow the team more if you've got more clients. So making that, if you like, business development and team growth an integrated part, with the objective of being, the best or equal best quality service providers we could possibly be. We never wanted to lose a client, because we either happy to lose clients if they wanted to go for a cheap fee, which I don't think ever happened. I did once or twice, but they regretted it, of course. But otherwise, it was it was great fun. It was really cool. So we had a really big team by the time I left.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mean, you were always very big in networking, as far as I could tell. Like, your name would pop up in all these different circles around Perth, and you were down at Space Cubed, or you're at Perth Angels events, or you're at all these different things, and putting your name out there in the RSM brand. So I did notice that in the Perth market, that the BD push was something that you guys focused on and put a lot of effort into. And it seems to work pretty well for you.
Well, I guess I've always, even from when I started it way back at KPMG, our approach was always to be part of the community. And so what does that look like? And we enjoy it, because I think one of the unique things about being an R&D tax person is you get to see some really cool stuff, and you get to engage with businesses of all sizes and types and industries and technologies, and you just want more of it. And so you sort of, to grow the practice, or to enjoy the work, to grow the practice, being out engaging in the places that the innovators hang out in, is really what we've always been about. I like it. That's what my friends are all in those places as well. So it's sort of killed 2 birds with 1 stone. And so hanging out where the innovators like to hang out, the entrepreneurs or the businesses are liking to hanging out, and helping them, not just with their R&D tax, but when they're on an R&D tax journey, or they're claiming R&D tax, there's so many other things they need help with, and networks and connections with. So what the other part to that was always about was going and finding who the other experts are, the IP people, the lawyers, the specialists that our clients needed to know in order to progress their businesses. And those people hang out in those places as well, or those, the people in those places know those people you need to know. And so building up the network to support your existing clients, and obviously look for new clients, but also because it's fun. You just enjoy talking to people about their business, their journeys, and everything else that's going on. And the benefit of working in, some of the practices I was privileged to work in, as well as we could sponsor and support stuff. So we could actually go, okay, cool. I think you guys are having a real crack. This is an industry event. This is a function. This is a something that's making a difference to the ecosystem, the community. So we can sort of throw a little bit of support, whether that was offering them, a space, food and drink, actual money, speakers, whatever that was. We were in the fortunate position to be able to sort of go around and sort of say, okay, cool. If you need something, and I've got something left in my pocket, I'll help you out with it if I can. You get that sort of privilege to go out and hang out in those places, and also then see what the other missing pieces are, to say, okay, cool, well, that seems to be a trend at the moment. What's missing? What are people wanting? How can we help fill that gap from our network or our contacts? It's been great fun.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. So then after you built that practice at KPMG and built that team out nationally, you then looked to do the Unleashed Zone and ICN. So that to me is quite a big shift. You know, you're an accountant, you're a senior partner at a firm, you're helping clients with R&D tax claims, and then you're making a shift into an innovation consultant where you're helping companies in all sorts of areas to get their innovation off the ground, to commercialize, to get all the support they need, the funding they need, all of that sort of thing. So I'm interested in how you found that transition and kind of, I mean, what motivated that transition? What was exciting about it for you? And, you know, were you doing some of that already in your role?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. A lot of people say it was the stupidest thing you could have ever done, Steve. It's like, you've just built, you know, I spent 8 years building a super team, great practice. It was absolutely humming. And I went, yeah, next. It's like, you idiot. But no, I did it eyes wide open. And I think by hanging out with too many innovators and too many entrepreneurs, it sort of rubs off on you and eventually you go, oh, I'll do that as well now. So there's a whole bunch of those sorts of things. I also personally needed a break from R&D tax and a partnership. For me, I got to a stage where I was reasonably burnt out. And starting your own startup is the stupidest idea you can ever have when you're burnt out. Because you go, oh yeah, I'm just going to go from one level of stress and burnout to another one, but in an entirely different focus and strategy and direction. And I had been doing a lot of what we decided we want to do in the Unleashed Zone. I've been doing bits and pieces for a few years. So it's been something that I've been working towards and building towards. And we spoke a lot at RSM with the partnership about how it might fit within RSM. And it wasn't really the sort of thing you can do in an accounting practice, because it was way too random and different and out there. So completely open and honest with all the partners, and we had a very, very comfortable, smooth exit. So they really supported me on that process, which was really nice. And yeah, so started the Unleashed Zone with that, you know, the innovation community. What can we do to continue to drive and support the innovation community? What are some of those missing pieces, and what do we think will help with that? And so we started our startup with some, you know, visions and objectives, and trialed a whole bunch of different things to say, okay, well, is this the you know, something that's, you know, is missing, or we think we can do more of? And yeah, we've had a ball trialing and testing different scenarios of where we can help accelerate innovation on what, you know, those missing pieces really are, that we think, you know, when we see a startup or an innovator, whether it's a big, small or medium, doesn't business, it's all effectively all the same. There are similar roadblocks and challenges that they all have at different, you know, different steps along the journey. So how can we sort of try to help them get around those or through those challenges has been what we've really looked at doing with the Unleashed Zone. Yeah.
And so how has that journey been over the first 2 years of starting the business?
It's been hard, as all startups are, definitely. And you learn so much. Like, and again, that's the other reason I wanted to do it, because I wanted to go deep in the topic for, you know, so I could do it. I was doing bits and pieces of it when I was at RSM, which was great. But you couldn't, obviously you can't go deep if you've got, you know, 90% of your time's on R&D tax, and there's this little 10% left over for sort of trialing what we wanted to do in the Unleashed Zone. So by going deep in it, the learning has been huge. It would be an understatement. And the premise of the journey that the startup follows or an innovator follows has obviously we've really identified what that journey looks like, and really confirmed that a lot of the theory we had was correct. And it's the stuff that we know inherently as people around innovation and those that do innovation. But what we do is codifying it to sort of say, these are actually the steps. So we've really codified what those steps of a startup journey looks like, and what you feel like you need to tick off as you go, and what you need to focus on, and how you're going to progress. And so therefore the education around that, how to educate. So it's great to know something, but how do we share that? That's what we've been really trying to figure out, is how do we share that knowledge, the education piece. So learning about how to educate on that. Is that, online? Is it in a classroom? Is it one-to-one? All those scenarios. We've trialed and worked through those. So workshops and all that sort of stuff. But then also community. The biggest finding out of the journey so far has been, being a business owner, whether you're an innovator, a startup, whatever, it's a lonely journey, because there's so much pressure on your decision making. Even if you've got a great team around you, and a great, home life or whatever it is, having a startup, particularly, or being an innovator, is actually really lonely, in a really, obviously, really, in an exciting way, a really stressful, journey. So that community of understanding and peers can't be underestimated. And I probably underestimated it when we started, how important that was going to be. And so providing community, potential, how to gather. There are loads of cool communities that the innovators and startups can join, but didn't quite give them all the masses what they really wanted from a community aspect. So community, and then the third piece of that, which is sort of what's become really popular, is just updates on what's going on in the total innovation community. So the biggest finding we've found is WA innovation, and Australian innovation to an extent, but WA is our test market, it's a really good innovation ecosystem. It's got really cool people, really good services, really good support. But the biggest problem with an ecosystem like WA's innovation is it's inefficient. Because it's effectively still a small ecosystem, how an innovator or a startup progresses through those stages, like I was talking about, is actually what causes them the biggest problem. Because the ecosystem itself doesn't efficiently move people around. And also you've got to know someone like, if you like myself or yourself, if you join the ecosystem, to know how to progress through. So you need to know the right person to help you get through. And that's way inefficient, because you've got to come through this mess to go, oh, Steve, great, can you help me with my next step? And you go, yeah, cool, of course I can. But if there was a signpost over there for you that says, this is where you are now, this is where you need to go next, that would help. So the ecosystem efficiency is really what we found. We're trying to wrap around. So all the things that happen are great. So all the superstars and all the events and all the things are awesome, but there's no glue between them, or very hard. And that glue between them does exist, but it's all personal. It's like, I have to know who's running that event, who has to know who's running that event, who, to pass somebody around. So we've found that by providing so we've got a calendar now. So we've built basically a WA innovation calendar. Saying, cool, which sounds super lame and really, really basic, but actually that was missing, because how do you know where to go unless you're in the in crowd? And then you don't even know that the events that are going on outside that. So a WA innovation calendar and a WA weekly update email is really, what it's sort of boiled down to. So I say, okay, well, if we've got a calendar and a weekly email of what's going on, where it is, and what the options are, it ticks a lot of the boxes, because you can just check if you're a service provider, or if you're a startup or an innovator in a business. You go, what's going on again? Oh, that's cool, I'll go to that. Or where's something I need to catch up on? Oh, cool, here's a little thing, I'll just go and do that. Boom. Like, it's sort of like that takes care of a lot of the stuff that we're sort of trying to do. So, okay, let's just put an email out in the calendar. So that's been the biggest finding of all.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, yeah, you talk about spending 90% of your time on R&D tax and having 10% left over to sort of tinker with some of this stuff. And then when you start the Unleash Zone, you then have the opportunity to dive deep and really get immersed in the ecosystem and really start pulling apart some of this stuff, codifying the journey, understanding how important the networking relationships are, the emails and the calendar and all that stuff, sort of tying together the pieces to help support entrepreneurs on the journey that they're going to go through. I relate to that in a lot of ways. Like, there was always this pull in me to want to do more of that. When I was at Deloitte in particular, Deloitte have an innovative focus, and they would talk about digital and data analytics and things like that. And I went over to Melbourne for 3 months on a secondment to immerse myself in that environment for 3 months. And that was amazing. Like, I learned so much in such a short period of time, and really got motivated and inspired to spend more time there and to learn more as much as I could, and I guess that was part of the reason for going into Epic Delivery and trying that startup world, was it being around these people, and the energy rubs off, that entrepreneurial spirit, and that belief in self, and the ability to create whatever you can imagine and make it a reality, like that is contagious. And yeah, it is nice to be able to dive deep and to soak up the atmosphere and the energy, and then be able to create something from that space. So yeah, I totally relate to that. And I was looking through your website earlier and looking at your reading list as well, and a lot of the books that you've put up there are books that I've read, like The E-Myth Revisited and Good to Great and The Innovator's Dilemma. Yeah, all in the bookshelf. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not that the information isn't out there, or the recipes aren't necessarily available if you're looking hard enough, but to know where you are in the journey, what you need, and who you should be meeting and talking to is very difficult if it's a black box that you're not sure, what's on the inside of it. So yeah, absolutely understand where you're going with that.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it. That's exactly right. Everything does exist. It's sort of like, but the successful. So, what are the success factors? What is it that makes an innovator successful or a startup successful? And so you can go and read a whole bunch of those books as well. That's what the reading list are there for, and those sorts of things. And you can talk to those people. But you got to find the list of the books, and then you got to find hold on, they're all there. Like, let's just see if we can shortcut it for you, so that it's easier to find that stuff. And the recommended ones, instead of reading, 100 books, here's 2. I reckon that'll be a good starting point. Okay, cool. Let's read those 2, and that's it. So, and the thing we're always talking about this. My biggest thing has always been, and this goes right back to Andrew Whitman. I started at KPMG. This is where my actual journey on innovation started. Was Andrew, not R&D tax, but innovation. Innovation is a management process. It's not an art form. It's not magic. It's not science. Yes, your project may not succeed because of technical or market issues, but the process that you follow as an innovator, whether you're a startup or an innovator in an existing business, if you follow the management process of innovation, then your opportunity to succeed, and to succeed bigger than you otherwise would have, and sooner than you otherwise would have, goes up. But where do you go to learn innovation management or startup management? You go to learn the little bits of it, but what does the whole journey look like? And how can I just sort of jump through those hoops at the right stages? And that's really what we're saying. How do we get that innovation management theory, which is management practice 101, but it isn't really understood? And so, and you can go one-on-one, because there are some awesome consultants around that understand it. Okay, so this is not magic science. This is process that you can go one-on-one with. But how do we get that to the masses as easily as possible, so that then if they choose to use an awesome consultant to do it for them, great, they can find that consultant really quickly and really well. But in the meantime, how can they know what to do, where to go, what's next? We basically call it being S cubed. So we sort of say, the valley of death, the startup journey through the valley of death, we want that journey to be S cubed. And what we mean by that is, we want it to be shorter, we want it to be shallower, we want it to be steeper. So what decisions can they make through the valley of death that means to get from start to break even, or making some money, hopefully? Want to make that as short as possible by making good decisions, as shallow as possible, and so by still making good decisions and not wasting money or resources, and then get steeper. So how can you get a bigger return as quick as possible? So every single decision a startup or an innovator makes every single day makes an S cubed decision, or could make an S cubed decision. And as the saying goes, it's not the conditions, it's the decisions we make. And so living the conditions of a startup isn't the reason it does or doesn't succeed. It's making the decisions that a good startup should make makes the difference between good big success and unfortunately not getting to the magic land of out of the valley of death. So yeah, S cubed is how we sort of summarize it.
Yeah, cool. I like that. Shorter, shallower, and steeper. That's a good, a good way to remember that. And yeah, I totally agree with you about the decision-making process and the importance of that. I mean, one of the best things about being an R&D consultant is you get to see so many companies across such a diverse range of industries and diverse sizes and skill levels and everything. And you can kind of start to, just through observing what works and what doesn't, and over the long run, you can get an intangible feel for how that process plays out again and again and again. And it seems to be there are common factors that play out. And I'm interested in, so when you say making good decisions, conceptually that lands for sure, but I'm interested in how, as entrepreneurs, do we make good decisions?
Excellent, mate. And you're right. And so that, like you said at the beginning, as an R&D tax consultant, so 20 odd years, thousands of projects I've basically worked on, and you see the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so that's, you're exactly right. So you see it because you just have to, you just see them. You go, shit, we'll see. I wish I could have told you that before you got there. And then, I've seen that before, and that's what, so that's, you're right, that's inherently what's been sucked into the brain that sort of comes out in different forms. But the decisions, and that's where we decided that it was critical. So basically I put a diagnostic together. So I started with a diagnostic. So, okay, here's these 14 factors. So if you continually reassess these 14 diagnostic issues, everyone has diagnostic, but basically we just broke it up into those good and bad issues that you need to continue to reassess. And that was the first part. I mean, cool. And that was what I was, been doing for a while in different ways. So playing the diagnostic in a bunch of ways. But then as we started to roll that out in the Unleash, so we started going, actually, there's a missing piece here. And it's actually defining the stages that the business is in to then apply the diagnostic decision-making process on top of, because that's the biggest mistake. A business or startup won't know where it is on that valley of death. They know they're in that valley of death. So actually, funnily enough, not enough businesses know they're in a valley of death. So it's the first learning point is, dude, you're in a valley of death. They go, well, I go, yeah, this is the standard pathway. They go, oh, that's me. Go, yeah, I know. But then they go, okay. And they then don't know what decisions to make because they've got a million decisions to make. As a startup, we have to do everything at once. What it feels like we've got to do everything at once. We've got to make all these decisions. So what happens is we revert to form. What are we comfortable with? What do we like to do? What do we think, we should be doing is normally what we want to do, not what we have to do. So taking that, gut instinct piece out of it as well to an extent, it still helps, by saying you're at this stage. And when you're in this stage, these are the critical issues you need to focus on. What often happens is they're in a stage, but they're doing the fun stuff that goes further along the pipeline, or the stuff that they don't need to do yet, or they haven't done yet. They get to that stage and they left all these things undone. And we all know that's one of the biggest issues. It's like there's all these little skeletons in the closet that they've ignored. And you go, that's going to bite you at some point, and it does. And it's about, again, that shorter, shallower, steeper is if you're at point, what we call, say, stage 2, for example, which is you're sort of getting your MVP and your first clients organized. If you're in stage 2, don't be focusing on scale up issues yet. Don't try to build your MVP. And again, this is the standards, the technical issues. Don't try to build your MVP for full scale. Know that at some stage you have to build a full scale model, whether it's a physical product or a software, it doesn't matter. These are the same issues across all industries, maybe a little bit different for biotech, obviously. But they're the same issues. Don't be doing that yet. That's a waste of money. And you're probably going to have to, once you roll it out, rebuild it anyway, because you're going to find stuff that you have to build. So at stage 2, focus on just the MVP, as the techies will tell you, which is 100% correct, be lean. But also, where's your first client? Have you got your shareholders agreement organized? You have all those boring things that have to get done at stage 1 and 2. Don't get to stage 3 and go, I've got to do that. So it's about showing where to get. So if you go on a road trip, so I've got some videos, and one of the examples is the road trip. If you go on a road trip, you need a map and you need some, directions. If that's all the valley of death is, it's a road trip. And if you don't know where you are on that journey, but also what the next step is that's coming up, you don't pack your car with the right stuff to get through the next step. And so you drive up to that gate point and you go, oh, I didn't know this. I needed a visa to get through this gate point. You drive home, get your visa and come back, and you just wasted your time. So your journey is now longer and deeper. So knowing what you have to do right now and what the next roadblock is going to look like means that your decisions are better. You focus focus on these issues. Now, you still have to have an idea of all those future big issues, but you don't spend your time and money and resources on those future issues. You focus on these ones. And so that's what the decision's about, is what are my priorities right now? And again, we don't know what we don't know. So then it's about going and finding the right people that are experts at stage 2. So you go to, the advisors that know how to deal with stage 2 stuff. You don't go to an advisor that's really good at, global international audits when you're at stage 2. You go, they're awesome, and they will be able to help you fully, and they want to help you, and we want them to help you when you get to stage 4 and 5. At stage 2, you need a local X, Y, and Z that understands you, but is the right fit for what you need. And that sort of stuff. That's what we're talking about with decisions. It's what do you need, and who are the people that can tell you what you need for this stage, not for the future stage, but for this stage right now.
Yeah, beautiful. I really like that, because so my experience with Epic Delivery is something very similar to what you've just outlined, where I don't want to throw Ryan under the bus too much. Ryan O'Sullivan, shout out to Ryan. He was the founder of that company and very brilliant at what he did. But what I found that we did was we fell back to what we were comfortable with, and we weren't necessarily doing the things that were important to us at the stage we were at. And it's so easy to do the things you're comfortable with, and difficult and challenging to do the things that are important and urgent, but because they're challenging, you find an excuse to avoid doing them and avoid confronting them until it's too late. And Ryan is a brilliant software developer, a brilliant designer. So we built a very beautiful app, more than an MVP, I would say. It was really sleek and really well designed and functioned really well. We could have got away with a leaner, meaner, less polished version. And we focused too much on pricing models and how runners were going to be compensated and all that, rather than just simply acquiring customers. Like we acquired enough customers to test the model, and it worked. Customers loved it and everything, but we didn't build the network and the relationships, particularly for us, with cafes, restaurants, fast food outlets, things like that, that were really going to drive user growth early on. And we kind of left it too late. And then we started pitching at Perth Angels. We didn't get any interest there. And then competitors came into the market and made it really difficult, like a really, really steep uphill climb to try and win that battle. But what you're saying really resonates about doing the things that are comfortable rather than doing the things that you should be doing. And not going too hard on the MVP, just getting it out there and testing it in the market.
Absolutely. And you're now one of the really, so we get through stage 2, we call one, and we got 3 and 4. And stage 3 is about starting to build the marketing funnel effectively. And how are we going to scale, not the product, but the marketing and the sales? And that gets skipped a lot as well. So, because then we have to get funded and everything else. But like you said, so we get those early adopters on, we go, awesome. And so one of the things we teach is that early adopter curve, to say, great. And then there's that crack crossing the chasm. It's again, it's standard theory. You get early adopters and you assume you can go from early adopters to the mass market. And that's a massive, again, just innovation theory or marketing theory 101 that most of us don't know until it's too late. Crossing the chasm is a big issue. And we need to start to address that in stage 3, not leave that to later. Because again, we can't raise money because the investors know that that's a big issue. And they go, okay, cool. Well, tell us when you've developed your marketing funnel, more sophisticated version. No, not built it out, but you can prove that you're not just can win early adopters, but you can basically, if you've got your marketing metrics right, if we throw some money at that, it will generate more clients. And that's what we get wrong a lot of the time is, how do we turn it from early adopters into mass market? Obviously, we can build the tech out, but how do we scale the marketing funnel and the sales process? And that's the stage 3, 4 issue. Again, we often skip that. We go, prove an MVP, got some early adopters. Now let's go get a whole bunch of money to scale it. You you still got to prove a little bit to scale it. And so many conversations around funding, issues with funding. R&D tax is obviously fabulous and grants are great when they work, but understanding how equity and debt and other funding mechanisms play on that journey. And most Australian innovators, West Australians particularly, don't know how to be investor ready. So we'll go to an angel group and say, cool, I'm ready. And they go, no, you're not. And they go, oh, why, what's wrong? And so that 6 months we spend, which we have to, getting ready for a fundraising, we don't actually get ready for it properly.
Yeah.
Because we don't get our house in order for what they want to see. We assume they just want to see some MVP and some early clients. You go, yeah, that's great, but you've got to give them a bit more than that. Or it's a seed investor, not an angel round, and knowing the difference between an angel round and a seed investor, not the same. We don't get taught that sort of stuff. Whereas your big ecosystems, your successful ecosystems, and we compare it to like mining. Compare the mining, if you're going into mining in WA, you can walk into any office and they'll say, okay, you're at this stage on your exploration to mining journey. Therefore, these are the sort of investors you speak to. This is how you prepare for that investment round, and this is what you do. And then after you've done that, you go to these guys, and this team helps you with this. And then it's an absolutely the roadmap for following from kicking dirt, or before you even kick dirt, to selling it, exiting it, whatever that looks like. It is a well-trodden pathway that the experts, which are lots of them, know how to follow, because it's happening in WA for 100 years. Well, we're trying to do, if you like, that's what's missing in innovation in the startup journey. It's like, okay, where do I go? It's random. And you go, no, it's not random. There are steps. And if you follow those steps, more likely to succeed than fail.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, very cool. So I noticed that you've recently taken on a role at Innovate Australia as well. I wanted to ask you a bit about that role. How are you enjoying that? And what are Innovate Australia doing to help the innovation scene?
Great, thank you. Love the Innovate Australia team. So yes, I've come on board as a volunteer CEO, which is wonderful. Really enjoy it. They've got an awesome brand. So Peter and Adam and the rest of the team, the board and whatever behind Innovate Australia have done a really good job for 6 to 8 years running deep innovation topics, effectively around tech. So, deep on what's the hydrogen issues and bringing great speakers, or whatever the tech topics are of the moment. And they've done a great job of bringing those people together and building a community around them. So that we've got a huge mailing list, and they do wonderful events. They have done wonderful events. So they've asked me to come on board to help them out, basically now to stabilize that a little bit and grow it, take it to the next level. And so that's really what we're about. It's like, okay, how do we provide even more value to the innovation community? So what do they need? What does that look like? And what do we deliver to the innovation community so they progress? So the deep tech topics, absolutely, because if you're interested or you're currently in or want to get into, I'll use hydrogen as a great example, even though there's now Hydrogen Society, which is basically spun out of Innovate Australia. It's an easy example. If you're, if hydrogen is the issue that a lot of innovators or a lot of businesses need to understand, then we're going to run an event on it, in April, and it'll be here, and this is what we're going to bring. We're going to bring the superstars, and then the next one will be on batteries or whatever those topics are. AI. So we'll keep doing that because that's what people appreciate and need. But what we're also now intermingling with that is deep, the innovation funding pathway. So while we bring them deep into innovation topics, there's still that gap between what are all the different funding options for an innovator and where do they apply and how do I get them? So we're bringing the experts now to train as well and support on the funding options for innovation, because it's not just R&D tax, even though it's often forgotten that R&D tax applies. So yes, there's R&D tax, but it's also not just one grant. There's all these different pop-up grants that appear every now and again. So what are they? It's not just one version of equity. Equity comes in different ranges, and don't ignore the debt, because debt can apply in these scenarios, and this is how. So bring those topic expert in that explain when and where the funding options fit that valley of death journey and or a corporate's journey, so that they don't have to then go, again, it's that time to find the expert. So if you're an innovator, where do you go to find out about the funding options? Well, they'll come and see you, or they'll come and see me. Yeah, that's great. So we still obviously want to promote that. But there's also now this opportunity for an association to say, here's the list of stuff. Now, if you're at this stage, you need to go and think about R&D tax, all these stages. You need to go and think about R&D tax. And this is the introduction to it. And now here's all the experts that do that for you. And so Innovate Australia is going to bring in the tech topics, to continue the tech topics, but bringing these funding overarching training sessions or seminars that anybody can attend to go, okay, I'm at this stage. There isn't any debt for innovation, surely. Well, yeah, there is. If you do this, this, and this, you can basically get some debt at the right times. If, again, you're investor ready, you're debt ready, or whatever that looks like. So that's what we try and do with Innovate Australia, is to enhance the innovation ecosystem by bringing the right topic experts, which is technical and in this stage funding, and we'll then expand that out to other. We call it, the boring topics, accounting stuff, legal stuff. My patent guys are that's sort of exciting, so people think they're really cool. We know they're not. They're all just dorks. But those sorts of boring topics that so Innovate Australia has been doing the fun, sexy topics, which is great. But let's start bringing some of those boring topics that make the fun, sexy stuff work.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
So
and
the basics
looking on.
Sorry. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's perfect. Looking on your website as well, you've got a ICN pitch night coming up on the 6th of April. So
absolutely, we've got a ripper pitch night. We've decided as well. So there are a few pitch nights every now and again. We're turning the pitch night concept a little bit upside down and back to front to see. We're doing a trial or a test for WA on, let's mix this pitch thing up a little bit. I've bitten off way more than I can chew. I think I've got 24, 25.
Wow.
But what we're doing is 2-minute sprint pitching. So got 2 minutes, go hard. I've done a little bit of vetting just to say, okay, cool, you're all right. But it's also pitching for yes, there is a pitching for money, definitely. So a lot of them are pitching for investment. But they're also pitching for support. So that's the thing we're training. So what skills do you need? What promotion do you need? What is it that's going to help you progress? So what is your current issue that if you can't unlock this issue, you will move faster and better and quicker? So if we can get 20 to 30 pitches go bang, 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 bang. Networking session. So there'll be the pitching and then the networking to then connect with people. To then say, okay, yeah, I can help you, or I know someone that can help you. So it's pitch night at the museum, 6th of April. And it's on obviously hybrid online as well. So we'll be running the online version so people can watch, and also doing some online breakouts. Really just to mix it up and just see how it works. See if it does help any WA startups that need a little kick along. And they're for earlier stage. So we're looking at, again, what we call stage 2, 3, which are the ones that have or are doing the MVP. So hopefully most of them have got their MVP built and they have either currently got their first clients or are looking for their first clients. So that's the sweet spot that we've got pitching. So it's what we call stage 2, 3. Some of them are a bit further along and some of them are a little bit earlier, just to give them a chance to promote themselves. We're looking forward to a really, really big night.
Very cool. Sounds awesome. I like the fact that you're mixing it up and it's not necessarily all about money. It's about what support, marketing, advice, things like that they can look at. And short and sharp, 2 minutes, and then see what happens. Let them go for it. And see
exactly.
And you never know. I mean, it might be, one of the 25 that you've got pitching just happens to meet someone on that night that can support them through the next phase of the journey. And you never know until you put something like that out there, do you?
Exactly. And a number of the pitches as well, I'm looking forward to them to meeting each other, because we see as R&D tax people, you see it all the time. You see these trends come through. Suddenly you're doing 4 projects in a certain space. And you go, where the hell would that happen? And that's come up in the pitch night as well. There's a number of projects that are all around about the same sort of thing. So I'm really looking forward to those people seeing and meeting each other. Going, okay, well, from a laziness perspective, I now don't have to do the introductions. I don't have to go, okay, cool, I'll email you and connect you together, which is normally what we do and we love doing it. But now I can sort of shortcut that and say, hey, you just come here and you get to meet the other end of the space. So it's sort of like a cheat way for me to help connect a lot of those people, because I know they need to meet each other anyway. But also really diverse. The other thing that we know, again, as R&D tax people, we know how diverse the technical and industry perspectives are in WA with regards to random innovation, like all over the shop. And I've been fortunate enough to do a whole bunch of stuff with the Ignition program occurred for many years, actually since it started. And one of the beautiful things about Ignition I've always loved is the super diversity of it, as in, you will get every style of person, project, industry, technology through there. There is not selecting any winner industries. It just go, all come here, have a crack. You're an entrepreneur, that'll do. And that's what we've sort of done. So we want a range, because as well, we know that that's interesting, and you never know what comes out of diversity.
Totally. Very cool. All right. So the last question I have for you, it's always the same question every podcast, but it's a little bit different for you today because you're an R&D tax expert. The question I like to ask is, what has your experience with the R&D tax incentive been, and how do you think it helps startup companies? So you can answer that question in whatever way you want, but I'll throw that over to you.
Mate, there's a ripper. So it's almost asking yourself a question. This is great.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you've actually got me here. I get it now. No, R&D tax is, and by not doing R&D tax for a bunch of time as well, it really has highlighted how absolutely fundamental it is to every single innovator. If you're watching and you haven't done your R&D tax, or considered or you made an opinion on your eligibility for R&D tax, if it's based on your mate's opinion, it's wrong. Every single R&D tax assessment is on your situation and what you need to consider. And every single person that is serious about doing their R&D should be considering their R&D, because it is the only standard accessible R&D funding mechanism in Australia. So, and I don't care if you're paying tax, you're not paying tax, you're massive, you're little, it does not matter. If you're serious about your innovation in any way, shape or form, don't assume you know what the application process looks like. And even if you did it 3 years ago and you go, I can't claim it now, because we all know what happened 2 or 3 years ago. It was not fun being an R&D tax person a few years ago with what was going on. It is back to the good times with regards to appropriately being assessed, reviewed. And so Oz Industry are awesome, ATO are awesome. The eligibility process hasn't changed, which is great, because those of us that do it, we know it intimately, so that you can understand who does or doesn't qualify and why. So yeah, I don't think I can make it any more direct than that you are not serious about your innovation, your R&D, unless you've had a serious assessment of it, and you're treating it seriously. It's not free money. It has never been free money. You've got to document it more than ever, which is great. So your R&D management practices need to step right up. If you want the money, it is available if you meet the criteria, but treat it as an investor. So R&D tax is, the government is investing in you. So treat it appropriately, document it, manage it, keep your timesheets, do all the boring stuff that actually returns a benefit to you in dollars in your pocket. How's that go?
Yeah, brilliant. That's great. That's a fantastic answer, Steve. I expected as much from you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think you were safe.
Brilliant. Well, thanks so much for giving me an hour of your time. I really appreciate it, and nice to hear all the amazing stuff that you're doing in the innovation ecosystem, and yeah, fantastic to be running things like this for early stage startups, because I know from firsthand experience how needed it is, and I'm sure that the companies that you're working with are very grateful for your expertise and experience in this area. So yeah, appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
That's right. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's awesome, and well done for you for doing this, because it takes a lot of time for you. I've done some of this stuff myself as well. I know how hard this is, and it's a massive give back for you to share this sort of stuff and make this effort. So thank you for inviting me. It's an absolute privilege to have this opportunity, and well done, and thank you for organising it.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much, Steve. Take care. All the best.
Yeah, you too. Have fun. Bye.
Yeah.